And it was already a miracle, like, wow, okay, I'm not the only, I'm not the only crazy guy in town. And I found some, PCBs that people made of mostly clones of old designs, and I started building those circuits, and remarkably they worked. And that was a moment of, tear and joys. And I stayed in that phase for I think maybe 1 or 2 years, just keep building more and more stuff and building myself a big modular synthesizer and all getting excited about also mechanical things and electrical things, breaking things apart and checking them out. So I think I had those two qualities, but I never got them really connected together. It's only took, I think, in the very late 80s and early 90s that I started hearing what's called, today everybody knows it as techno. Back then it was pretty fresh, and it's complete as one of the disciples of that music back then. And at some point in time, I really want to start making that kind of music, and was fascinated where those sounds coming from. It was like so fresh and new to me. And that's where I discovered for the first time the modular synthesizer. I started seeing pictures of studios of people working with the stuff. And that was the early, the MOOC systems, the EMU systems, the very early, good stuff that was done by then. And obviously I was started being aware of the polyphonic analog synths of that time, and their power. And one thing I couldn't do is I couldn't buy the stuff. I was too broke and too young, and I think that's a story we all go through.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, let me try and see, maybe I can try and build that stuff. And to remind you, these were the early internet days. So all of a sudden you can talk to someone, in the United States or in Europe, and I was based in Israel back then. So you're pretty isolated over there. If you want to get some information, you really need to either fly back then or do like a long distance call. I went online, and there was like a synthesizer do-it-yourself mailing list, and over there I met crazy people just like me, and it was already a miracle. Like, wow, okay, I'm not the only crazy guy in town. And I found some, PCBs that people made of mostly cloned of all designs, and I started building those circuits, and remarkably they worked. And that was a moment of, tear and joys. I stayed in that phase for I think maybe 1 or 2 years, just keep building more and more stuff and building myself a big modular synthesizer and all getting excited about it, like, oh my god, I got the gear I always wanted, and here's the sound, this is it. And another thing happened those days, that everybody was ditching the analog, everybody was going through computer and digital. So I felt even more like, oh, I'm the weird kid in the neighborhood. This whole island, like a weird crazy professor there. But I believed in it, because immediately when I heard the sound coming up on the analog oscillator, it was like, okay, that's it. This is it. This is what I was looking for. That's the sound. And obviously I would start buying books and learning about the industry and the people and, everything that evolved. What hit me at some point is that I was trying to understand the circuits. And at that point I was going to the Tel Aviv University, and I was buying books. For electrical engineering, and trying to study myself, as much as I can. And I did that, and it went well, but I always felt it up to a point where there was a ceiling, I couldn't pass that. I could never get my oscillator to tune very well. I could never get the filter to
really low noises,
as I could hear in
other, either kits or even sound recordings that I heard.
Right.
At that point, I felt that, that knowledge, the technical aspect of it, the musical aspect, they all kind of get together, and I really fell in love with the process of building those synths and getting to know how they work. So my imagination took me on a whole different path all of a sudden. So originally I was like into it to build my own instruments and make my own music, but all of a sudden I was like, wow, I really like the technical aspect of that.
At that point, I decided, okay, I understand that this is the situation. I have a ceiling above me. What do I do? And I decided I'm going to go to the university and become an electrical engineer. And that is probably the right decision at the right time. I was, I think, 27 years old when I did that. And I said, it cannot be a wrong decision. You can always, it's like an insurance in kind of life. You're either going to have a job as an electrical engineer in Motorola, or I'll be able to make some musical instruments at some point in life. Right? But for sure, I'll be able to tune my arse a little bit. Yeah, that was the main goal. And then the interesting part was that when I went to the university, I was sitting in the class, I really liked it and I really enjoyed it because when the teacher was drawing sine waves on the board, I knew what sound waves are. I knew how they sound. And everybody around me looked at me like crazy. What are you talking about? I was like, guys, come, there's another aspect of a sine wave behind the shape. It's not just a shape you see on a scope. It has a feeling. It's a sound. Come over, I'll let you hear it. So, a lot of students don't even know that electronic has another medium other than, the visual as you can see on a scope or the simulation. It's the actual, you can actually hear electronics. You can actually hear what you're seeing on the board. So it was really, really fascinating. And those years at school were just amazing. And I felt that, I was learning and I was coming home. And sometimes I could even practice the things I was learning to my kids, things I was building. And then when I finished school, I finished it very well, and I was grabbed into a company which was basically like a startup company who was doing design for semiconductor process control and process generation. It's a sub-company of Applied Materials. And this is really, really high-tech and scientific stuff over there. And for me, this was like the part of exposure I needed to turn my education into practice. It was something that I didn't went to just because, I was like, oh, that's what I want to do in life. It was because I knew there's another thing I need to go through before I can be independent and start really doing what I want to do. And that was a great bridge because over there I really learned the bare bones of electronic design, but I learned it from a different point of view. I learned it from the practice side, and I worked with professors which are just amazing. And it was a fountain of knowledge you cannot get at the university. It's the real world.
Right. Well, let me step here because I already have like 50 questions I want to ask. A couple of things. First of all, roughly what time? Not that I'm going to ask you exactly, but what years roughly was this
I started 27. I think I finished was 31.
So what year? Like, was it in the 2000s yet?
Early 2000s. Early 90s, 2000s. Yeah.
Because one of the things that I had heard was that a lot of universities sort of stopped teaching analog electronics.
Very true.
Because it just wasn't widely used in the industry.
Well, I think it very much depends on the area because Israel, for example, is a country with a lot of science and a lot of background in semiconductors. And semiconductors is still very much analog design. Because you design transistors. It's true that eventually what you create are logic, big logic. Exactly. But the bare bones of them are transistor. It's mostly analog design. So there is a lot of respect to that there, and you can see it sinking down in the university. And I was actually very lucky because I had a teacher who was amazing at design, and you could see he loved the thing. And that, it's always about that. It's either you got somebody with passion, and a good teacher can change your life. And a worst teacher can destroy your life. I believe that. Because when I was in high school, I had a teacher. And part of it is because the teachers there just couldn't fulfill my imagination, I think, at the time. And to the opposite, this guy was so amazing that, up to this day, I'm still in touch with him. He's not a big guy in the university and grew up and anymore his service because he was just amazing for me. He was an inspiration, but also, a lot of knowledge.
Cool, so I didn't mean to sidetrack you, but I was just really curious because it just seems like jazz has, it seems like the whole lifetime
So again, for me, one of the birthing analog sounds, all day was about those days everybody was pitching their analog. And not only that, they talked really bad about it. We've been on anymore. And I thought myself sometimes like, am I stupid or what the hell?
there was, so
I it goes, either it doesn't. It is what it is.
But it's and the fact that you have a background as a DJ means that the process of doing releases is actually really, really important because as a DJ you're dependent upon creative people to do releases and so on. So you have an understanding of how important that is.
And even more, it's very rare that people
release things on vinyl today, because in most chances you won't even pay off for the investment. But I insisted on that. I said, I'm not going to be releasing anything without getting it on vinyl as well, because first of all, I listen to stuff on vinyl, and I think just like the way analog in musical instruments getting back, there's no doubt in my mind that analog in some sort doesn't necessarily need to be a vinyl, but analog will come back in some form of media that we might not know today, and it's important to keep it alive. Just so people know that things can sound different.
I absolutely agree, and I don't know. I think actually vinyl is a strong player here. I was at a bookstore in one of these national book chains the other day, and big sign in the front window: "We have vinyl."
Wow!
So if the Barnes and Noble system is going to start carrying vinyl, there's some opportunity there. And frankly, recently I ordered some music for myself, and I searched out vinyl because there's not only the sound, but even just interacting with the music in that way.
Yes, exactly.
Hearing it for that specific length of time. Those kind of things are all a real valuable way of hearing music.
Totally. I just heard an interview with Sting a few days ago, and he was talking about how he's making now a movie for theater, and they were asking him why theater from everything else? And he was, because it's the only medium today where I can create a whole set of songs that will be followed the way I want them to be followed. I can make the story, and this is a good point. But it's interesting time, a lot of changes, the technology really hits the music business from a lot of sides, and I think in a way it's probably the only thing in human history where we went backwards. Yeah, but sometimes you need to go back in order to move,
in order to understand why you want to move forward.
Exactly, and have the energy to do so.
Getting back to your history, you came out of school and you got some real world experience at this company. I think it's really cool because it sounds like you knew what you needed to learn and this was a great
Yes.
So how did you go from commercial electrical engineer or electronics engineer to a guy living on the west coast of the U.S. making modules? What's the connecting thread there?
I think that there was a point in time where I realized that that's it. I got the knowledge and I can do it. I was also very frustrated with those who were selling analog gear back then, because I felt either they were dishonest about stuff, or they would just keep you waiting for stuff for a very long time. I couldn't fulfill my dream, which my dream was I wanted a modular studio. I wanted a big system where I can compose a complete tracks on it. And I needed sequencers, I needed quantizer, I needed VCAs, I needed so much gear, and I needed to be reliable, and I needed time, and it wasn't there. And not to mention the prices, which were ridiculous. And at that point I was like, okay, you know what, again, I'm at exactly the same intersection, and if I cannot buy it, I'm going to build it. And from that point I just left the company I was working, and I had some money in my pocket, and this company was working there. And I said, okay, let's start doing it. And I started doing I learned how to design the circuit board. I knew how to design the schematics themselves, and I had references obviously to design again that was done in the 70s and the 80s. And I started with a project which was called ACS, the tab number that was analog control systems. And the whole idea was that back then I wanted a sequencer that works. I didn't like working with a sequencer. I already had the oscillators and filters and VCAs, and these were okay, they kind of worked. highest, fastest sequencer ever to be made. And that was my goal, and I created that sequencer, and it was a one row of 16 step with a high precision quantizer that built next to it. And you could just stack those rows, and all of a sudden you got this massive wall of, I think I had like 8 or 9 of those sequencers, and it all played together, and it was amazing. And I started doing some music. And then what happened is that I showed it to some friends, and they wanted some. And I think this is the first time where people came over and like, hey, would you mind, can I buy this from you? I was like, are you kidding me? You know how long it took me to build this?
You couldn't pay me enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, okay, I'll be friends with you. I'll build you one. And I started finding myself, soldering, resistors and capacitors and chips and all that kind of stuff. And I sold a few systems to people in Europe and the States. And through this experience, I met a lot of, good people too. And then I moved to Germany, and I lived there for, I think, almost a year. I lived in Frankfurt, which is pretty much the center of, where techno came from. And over there, I got inspired again by the music, which, kept evolving, and by the artists and the vibe. But over there, I felt that I don't have the marketing, I didn't know how to sell stuff. I felt I got really interesting things in my hand, but I couldn't really, I didn't know how to approach people. So then I got back to Israel, and then I had a different opportunity with a guy I met through common friends who was also an Israeli, lived in the United States, who was a big mixing engineer in Hollywood. His name is Tom Hertzberg. He passed away 2 years ago. He was a smart guy, and he came with an idea for a guitar product. And we were talking on the internet, and he says, hey, why don't you come to the States and let's try to make this together. And I say, I don't have anything to lose. Let's try to do that. And that's how I moved to the States. So I got here, and the interesting thing is he was a mixing engineer at the record plant in LA, which, is a very famous and
prodigious thing.
Yes. So, I'm walking there the aisle, and Bono is walking next to me, and, all the big names. And here I am in the middle of the American industry, the music industry. And it gave me an exposure of how things are done here. And it was very interesting to see the differences between Europe and here, because when I lived in Germany, I was working in studios, and things are very, very different, the way people work here and the way people work there. And we did this project, which was like a guitar switcher, which was very interesting, and we started trying to see maybe we can find a company to invest in us, and blah, blah, blah. And I was trying to survive over here, and I was broke, and I started making websites for people, and I was started doing, again, side jobs that weren't musical at all.
Right.
And then one day I decided, okay, let me try and make a module, and again, I would start looking at the opportunities that, the electronic world has been gone through as far as the modernization of assembly of electronics and the miniaturization of components. And I saw an opportunity, and I said, okay, let me try and do some interesting things here. And interestingly enough is that the first module I did was actually digital. And that was the first DSP module ever to be made. We called it the Z5000, and it was me and another guy sitting at my apartment in Los Angeles, watching the view of the mountains and soldering boards. And back then I met the guy who runs Unload Haven, the biggest shop in the West Coast, and he was very encouraging and said, hey, why don't you get me 25 pieces of that? And I was like blown away by that. Wow, are you serious? Like, who will buy that?
25?
Yeah, 25. And even more interesting, once we got them, they sold in less than 24 hours. So it's more than 1 hour, if you do the math. So, it really was a fresh and interesting start, and it just picked up really, really fast. So we got this module, and then I started working on the Z3000, which was another thing I always thought was important. Is, musicians don't talk frequencies, they talk scales, notes. And I thought it was really important to make an oscillator that speak that time. I took the time to really do the design the way I like them and implement them from the background and experience I already got by that time. And I think this oscillator is a classic already for many years. It's been selling very well, and it's been known to be the most precise and stable oscillator on the market. And things just kept growing. The company kept growing, and there was more and more demand. And the 25 pieces order turned into 50, and the 50 turned into 100, and the 100 to 200, and it just kept growing. And all of a sudden, I'm finding myself giving service to people, and I need to deal with insurance, and I need to deal with rent, and I need to, and you turn into a business. And
like it or not, right?
Exactly, like it or not. And and there's good parts of it, and just like everything in life, everything is interesting. You can find interest in pretty much anything you deal with, as long as you're positive about it. And I try to keep myself positive about it. And in one go, it was paying off. I was learning a little bit of business, and I started learning a little bit about marketing, how do you present something. Because back in the days I realized you can have both. If you don't know how to sell it, you don't know how to present it right, who wants to see you get both? There's some piece of metal there. They don't know what it is.
They'll give you scrap metal prices.
Exactly. And not to mention that the world is full of people who will tell other people that, the piece of gold they have, the piece of metal they have is gold. So now, so it's a tricky world. But living in America has been an amazing experience for me because I really like the way people interact with and sharing information, and it helps me grow up the business into a level that I could never dream of. That brings us to details.
Great. Well, I have questions that are questions about your product line and how that relates. So, talk about the first sort of real build that you did was a sequencer. But what's interesting is your product line doesn't have a sequencer. You've got the Z8000, which is kind of it's a sequencer that bends my head.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Trigger Riot, which is a great trigger sequencing system, but you don't have what anybody would typically call a standard analog sequencer. Why is that?
Well, I think you missed one fresh, and that's circadian rhythms.
Oh, yes.
Yes, which was just released, so
one that I haven't played with yet, so there you go.
Exactly.
Well, I'll send you my address.
You see, the thing is, the experience I gained with the sequencing system gave me different perspective about the way they can be implemented. And on one hand, I didn't want to create one big giant sequencer that does it all because I thought, and I still think that we're not yet ready for that. Us as a company, and I don't think we are generally, because eurorack is not yet glued together very well as far as the standards. So the next best thing is a modular in a modular, basically taking the control system and turning it into a modular, where you have components of it. So you have like a trigger sequencer, like the circadian rhythm or the trigger rack. You have a CV sequencer, which is the Z1000. There's a quantizer we're now coming with, which is very interesting, which is going to fulfill the notes and the scales and that part of the formula. So
you're going to basically modularize the concept of sequencing.
Exactly. And I found, I talked with a lot of artists, and the most interesting thing is like the feedback you get is that some people see things in a certain way and others see them in a totally different way. And you cannot satisfy everybody. So usually when this happens, what I do is I'm trying to satisfy myself. And you know what, it's been working pretty well for some. I'm just saying, I get too many ideas here, it's just too much information. Let me just sit down and think, what do I need? I want to make music, what do I need to do?
Well, that sounds like that was the way that you would have done it.
Yes.
Prior to the release of the drum box, that was a really no way to get those sounds in a consistent way. You end up using the better part of the modulator just to get our job.
Exactly. Yes. Fix us a little.
And so, you know, it's clear that you were thinking what do I need to make sound? And it actually kind of seems like your head was, even if you didn't actually have the great big modular studio, it seems like your head is thinking.
Yes. I realized that the modular is amazing, but it's not a musical instrument per se. It was mostly a noise machine for many years, and the system from the 70s that were left and the 80s were having serious problems with tuning, so they were unreliable in that sense. And I was like, okay, how do you integrate this whole thing? You turn it into a music system, something that you can really compose. I don't want a computer next to me. I want just to sit down. And again, it's not because I don't like computer, it's because I felt there's something to be explored here on that front. And it was pretty easy because just as you say, I was too sitting down and devoting half of my modular to make a kick. But when I got this kick and I got the bass line running next, I was like, wow, it just sounds so amazing. It's so tight.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I need to think about this a little more. And the 808 and the 909s have been amazing sounds since ever. They're classic now, so I don't need to sell it to anybody. Everybody knows what it is. I started looking at those schematics, and I was thinking, how can I adopt it into a modular? The voltages on the modulars are different than what's in those machines, and how can I make it work reliably? And there were some attempts before where I redid it to do that, which were, not that great. So that helped me too because I could learn what can be done wrong.
Right, sure.
And I think we nailed it pretty well. We did the sounds, they sound very authentic. And, it's like a side story to that is that when I designed the 808, especially the bass drum, I was looking for source to compare. And so I bought an 808 and I was listening to it and I was like, wow, that sounds great. And I built a circuit and it sounds different. Wait a second. So I was,
I contacted some friends and say, hey, you got an 808? Yeah, send me some samples. We recorded and that sounds different. I was like,
whoa, what the hell's going on over here? And every sample I got was so different. Now, it wasn't, we all know that analog, sounds different one from each other. That's normal. But it was just so dramatically different.
Yeah.
That I was, okay, at that time I realized that there's just no reference out there. And the only thing I can rely on is basically the math. The math behind it was what, the creator wanted this to sound like.
Right.